Oh my God, we're live. Okay. Hi, David. Hi, friends. Hi,
Hello.
whoever's watching this. Okay. If you ever see there's like zero people watching, it's never zero. Like we always have people watch. And then because you will see random comments show up later, but like it will always show zero on our end. But anyway, I don't really know why that.
Okay. I don't know where I'm looking. I don't even see the number 0, so I'm just gonna assume
Amazing.
you've got
Okay.
it down.
Yeah. Okay. I got it on. Okay. First of all, where are you? I'm always so curious about like in your podcast background, it's always the tree and the black background. What is it?
This is my makeshift dollar studio setup at home.
No,
Um,
are you okay? So I wouldn't tell the audience where we live, but I think we live in like, are you in some place that's like 15 minutes away from me right
yeah,
now?
I'm 15
Okay,
minutes
got it.
away from
Okay,
you.
okay, great. We could
And
have
yeah,
done this in person.
we should have just done this in person. But yes, this is. I was heavily inspired. If folks in the audience know about Zach Galifianakis, Between Two Ferns. Does that ring
Wait,
a bell?
what? What is that? No.
He's like, it's like this YouTube show, comedic show, like effectively, and he acts as like the most sarcastic person. My favorite episode that he did was when he was interviewing Barack Obama, and then he had this black curtain behind him. There are like two ferns, like it's called Between Two Ferns, right? So like there's two ferns beside him, and the black curtain behind him
Oh,
just falls, and then it unveils the Oval Office, in the White House, and Barack Obama was like, "Have you been filming in the Oval Office the entire time? Like, who gave you permission to do so?"
oh
Which I
my
thought was
God.
hilarious. But it's like heavily sarcastic. Everything is scripted, to be fair, right? But he
Mhm.
acts super sarcastic. He's like, you know what? I'm just gonna give insults and like rude remarks about each of my guests. And he interviews a lot of celebrities and all that. So, anyways, I
Yeah.
find it to be really funny, but I also like the setup in which they had, or like the idea behind the setups, which is why two plants, black background.
Oh my God. You know what you can do? Like if you're interviewing someone from, let's say like Sequoia or whatever, and then you just change the background to their office. That would be really
Oh
cool.
my
But
god.
anyway, it will be like, what is
Curtain
going on?
reveal. Like, curtain reveal, things fall down, and then
Yeah,
it's
bam.
Sequoia's
But
office.
anyway, dude, I just saw. I'm so sorry. Like when I was sending you this like really late doc of the prep doc or whatever, and then I saw you like message me in 2021. I was like having a heart attack, like because I never saw that message. And I was like, oh my God. And then but you're doing such a way better job than me at asking questions. You asked me like how do I have like 100 questions? I was like, I don't know. But and then I listened to your question. It's so well prepared. I was listening to your chat with Chris from Ahoya, and then like
Oh yeah, I
the
love Chris
recast
Rubo.
lady. So Courtney from recast. So like I was
Mhm.
listening, and then I was like, oh my God, you were asking them. Okay, so the scenario of like, let's say if a recent college grad who is like, you name it's like I don't know, Zootopia or whatever in the
I took a
theme of
lot of inspiration
Zootopia.
from Disney and Pixar. Yes.
That's not ChatGPT. That's you.
It's not ChatGPT. I've had a lot of friends who were just like, "Hey, you know what? When you ask questions, um, like, do you use AI? Do you use ChatGPT or some cousin of it?" And I was like, "I don't," because
Some
I'm
cousin
reminded of
of it.
Chris Rubos episode where there's ChatGPT is great with text. You can put in a transcript in it, and then they
Mhm,
can give you, here are the highlights. Here are the things that you're looking for in terms of what the episode is. Right here, Chris,
mhm,
when he applied to the Princeton endowment, his friend Seth Alexander at MIT was like, hey, you know what? Talk about timber because timber is going to be on the
mhm,
rise, and spend like 3 hours talking about
mhm,
timber. Do all the research you can about timber. Sure, you'll get those facts. Those are great.
mhm,
But on the flip side, as you start listening it to yourself, one thing I realized, and I've only heard Chris do this in two
mhm,
other interviews across the decades of interviews in which he did, which was he was really good at impressions. He was really good at accents.
mhm.
Um, and so the whole impetus behind Chris being the first episode is like, Chris, when I get you on, you can talk about whatever. We will talk about LP stuff, all that kind of stuff. But by the end, you have to give me an impression because you're so good at it. And he's really good
Mm.
at giving like an Arnold Schwarzenegger impression, a Yoda impression, um, like there's tons of these like fictional and in-person characters that he does a really
Mhm,
good job. I don't know what he does. I don't know if he stares at a mirror and just practices it all the time, but
mhm,
the accents, the impressions, he never mentions it explicit. He just changes his tune and it sounds exactly like the character in which he's like describing.
mhm,
And ChatGPT can't catch that because
mhm,
ChatGPT looks at text. They can't detect accents. They can't detect intonations and all that kind of stuff. So these are
mhm,
the things that I look for in that kind of world. Um, other things like, I was in the process of researching another LP for likely a season 3, to be fair, for the
Mhm.
podcast. Um,
How many seasons do you have? Like, you push out stuff, like, every day.
Oh, well,
I
I mean,
mean
like this is the end. Like we're recording this at the end of season 1, so I'm taking a month break before I go on season 2 again, and season 2 is going to start like beginning of March. But that's to keep the consistency, so I can keep every single
mhm,
week. Um, but like one of the folks I was researching, likely for season 3, he, I didn't realize this, but every so often our filler words are like likes, ahs, like like
mhm,
that's our filler word. For this person, their filler word was eto, which is the Japanese version of well and all that. And I started like, okay,
mhm.
you hear this enough times and you're like, maybe there's a through line in all of this. And maybe there's some Japanese background because normally you regress to well, like, and he chose eto, which I thought to be really, really interesting. So you double click on that and then you go in this deep dive and you find out some other world altogether.
Okay, I'm gonna cut you off there because we have 8 questions to get through.
Okay.
I just want to, and then we have like, you just gave me a cut of like at like 10:45, so I want to get through like all the
Mhm.
questions I have
That's
on
fair.
top
I
of
do
my
have to
head.
run at 10:45. I apologize, but
Okay.
let's do it.
So the first question is, what is your journey as an IR? So you like we met when you were at like ODA
Yeah.
on that
On
agile.
the Angels.
So and then okay, so and then at that point you were, I assume, encountering some LPs or like GPs or like wannabe angel investors. Um, how do you quickly build up this network? And then also your blog is awesome. I'm definitely gonna link it as a resources for everybody. It's a plug or whatever. Okay, so we'll get to that. But anyway, so how do you like quickly build up the network? I'm so impressed, by the way.
I promise I didn't pay you for product placement for my blog, but I
Okay,
appreciate it.
please send over like $100 or something over Venmo. Anyway, keep going.
Thank you for the promotion. Um, so I will be honest, it actually started from the blog. So I was at On Deck Angel. So I started my blog back in 2019,
Mhm,
and the resolve I had was I'm going to publish every single week. But I'm going to
mhm,
like just write things about things I care about, things I'm paying attention to, and it could range
mhm,
from anything from LP stuff to VC stuff to startup stuff
mhm,
to social experiments, events
mhm,
that I host,
mhm,
podcasts I listen, literally anything, right? Um, and what happened was this was in 2022, and I decided I'm going to write my first LP check, and this is what exactly what I'm going to do. And I knew I was
how much money did you have to write an LP check? Because I would imagine like if you want to be an LP of somewhere that's like, I don't know, 500K, stuff like that.
so I will give context. Also, my lawyer tells like for specific numbers. Sometimes I'm like I can't share nearly as much,
Yeah.
but I want to make this as tactical as it can for the audience. Usually, LP checks minimum check size for emerging fund managers. Different if you're doing a fund 3 and onwards. For fund 1s
Mhm.
and fund 2s are probably 100K, maybe 250K, give or take. Um,
You made a
no, no, no,
100K
hold up,
cost
hold up, hold
investment.
up, hold
Okay,
up,
yeah,
hold up,
sorry.
hold up. I saw where you were going to. That's not the direction in which I'm going to. But usually it's that,
Okay.
right? And if you're just another LP who's passive and just wants access to the asset class or access to the deal flow in which the fund manager is giving, you're fessing that up like 100K, 250K minimum.
Mhm,
The fund manager who wanted me as an LP, so they came to me as an LP, and like they were On Deck Angels fellow. They
mhm,
came to me like, "Hey, David, you've been so helpful. You've been helpful with LP introductions and all that kind of stuff." And LP introductions meaning I just introduced them. I didn't even know they were LPs. I was just like, "These are awesome investors. Just go talk to them,"
mhm,
kind of thing, right? And he was like a 10 mil fund, oversubscribed to $15 million, and he's like, "Can like I would love to have you as an LP. I'm fully committed. I'm oversubscribed, but I'm
mhm,
happy to squeeze you in some space to
mhm,
invest."
mhm. Why?
And I was
I
like,
mean, obviously you're awesome. Like I love chatting with you, but that's different than like if like someone will like make a space for you to invest.
it is different, right? And I put out literally a blog post this morning. I was like, how do you win deals? Because to be an
In the
investor, you need to
LP
be good at
space.
in the LP space
Mhm,
effectively, right? And it's about the value add. And I was just like, I was introing him. I was just, did I know that much about LP stuff or like how to run a fund? A little bit. I was on Deck Angels. We had an emerging manager track, which I was building out for our our first time fund managers who came from the angel background, syndicate lead background, spin out background, whatever it is. And so just helping him. And he was like, I would love to have you in. I don't care what kind of check size you can give. You can give me a $1,000 check and I will take you. Um, which is rare, right? And
mhm,
he's only able to do that. Well, he was only able to do it because he was oversubscribed and he wasn't even close to the limit. So for obviously not legal advice, not investment advice, go talk to your like an advisor and all that kind of stuff. This is for information entertainment purposes only. Um, but if you have a 10 million, I know I like I've got my disclaimers down. But like if you're raising a $10 million or below, you can have 249 accredited investors. If you're raising a $10 million fund or above, or like north of a $10 million fund, you can only have 99 accredited investors. Obviously, there's a different asset class for QPs. These are like qualified purchase, $5 million asset, all that kind of stuff, right? But for like he was raising a $10 million fund, so he could do a 249 accredited investors, and I think he was at like 50 investors, and so he's like, I can take any check size. And why that really matters is if you can only take in rounding it up 250 accredited investors for a $10 million fund, the minimum check size you need is 40K, give or take. And because he was oversubscribed, he could take any size check. Anyways, that's why he let me in, and I said, okay, I'm going to invest because I've seen him grow. I've seen him do just amazing things. I'm going to invest anyways. But I would like to invest thinking like an established LP, which I didn't know how to, like, I knew like 3, 4 LPs at the time, not that many. So what I did is like, okay, in trying to learn, I got to talk to other LPs. How do I go talk to other LPs? I hit up my favorite GPs and I'm like, hey, who is your favorite LP? Who's an LP you have on speed dial? And I would just love to chat with them, how their thought process is like when they invest. And so they were super kind. They were like, hey, let me intro you to 1 or 2 LPs. And within 2 months, I was talking to 80 LPs. So I went from like 4 LPs to like 80 LPs. And it was amazing. And I was like, holy cow, this is so tactical in nature. And obviously a lot of it was off the record. And I was like, I think the world deserves to know. And so I was like, I'm going to write a blog post. I asked the 80 LPs, like, hey, would you be interested in contributing to this blog post? Half of them were like, you know what? That was your information alone. Can't tell anyone else this. It's proprietary. And I was like, I get it. I don't want you to run against compliance, SEC rules, all that kind of stuff. I get it. The other half was like, I'm totally down to share it. 25% of that half was like, share my insight. Don't share my name because that just saves me the extra trouble of going through the compliance team and SEC and all that. And then we put out a blog post. And that was like Q3 of 2022. Happens to be my, at least point, like second best performing blog post to date. And to this day, I think it still accounts for like 30% of my blog's views in aggregate. And I started like, I've written more words on my blog than like the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So the fact that stands out and it's 30%, give or take, of the blogs across all the blog posts I've written is just like a testament to just how interested people were. But because of that, that started the flywheel effect of LP started reaching out and it's like, hey, you're super connected. I only know 80 LPs. Like the people that you see on here, just double that number. That's all I know.
You only know 80 LPs. That's really big. Okay, let's say, I have a couple questions there. So I feel like when you're like reaching out to these like GPs, what's your relationship with them? Are they like people went through like on deck angel? Because I kind of feel like if let's say I ask you a favor, hey David, can you introduce me to blah blah blah, and like I don't want to ask people favors. Like I hate like just like bothering people in general, and I wonder like what's your way of like converting some like one of the connections to kind of like offering you their LP network, because that's like a really valuable, right? It's not their client, but it's like, their partner, and then it's like their valuable partner. So I wonder, how do you kind of go about navigating that kind of like really interesting, sensitive, or just like intricate relationship?
So I will preface with I'm weird. If you look at my LinkedIn bio, I think it still says tenaciously and idiosyncratically curious. Like to this
That's
day,
not ChatGPT 2, but anyway, keep going.
it's not. This was prefacing that. The day I created my LinkedIn profile, that became my bio, and I've never changed it to date. And it is still, to my belief, to this day, I'd rather connect with people that I like, vibe with on a fundamental level than just people who click on my profile and connect with me because of my job title, which happens a lot, to be fair, right? But at least I didn't want the bio to be my job title, which is counterintuitive because my friends tell me if you just switched it to your job title, you could get so many more connections. I'm like, I don't really care about number of connections. I care about the quality of connections. And so to rewind that a little bit, I'm a bit weird. I've always, like, it goes back to like what Techstars once said. Like, it's all about give first, right? Like if you're a mentor at Techstars, the first thing they do when they onboard you is like they give you a full document, like give first. Here's all the ways to give first. Here's how to position. Here's a framework to think about, like how to give first to founders before you even think about taking, right? And I love that motto. Not that I didn't know that until I became a mentor at Techstars, but I also like, let's just do cool and fun things. And at the end of the day, we're all humans, right? And if I'm offering the same thing as everyone else, sure, there are probably people who are better at executing against that thing than I am. My special thing, which probably bleeds into the title of this 6 ways to build relationships with LPs, was always like hosting events. And I just did really weird events. I didn't do happy hours or fireside chats and all that. And I did events where, we had an interactive art gallery where all the art on the walls was co-created by all the guests, and they were all like investing related. And then we then auctioned off the charity and all that kind of stuff as well, right? So those are things we did. And we also did, like, for example, the next one I'm doing is like we're hosting an escape room where all the clues to escape out of the room is based on each LP stories individually. And so it forces you to talk to other folks. But it's these interesting experiences that you pull people together, and LPs, GPs, doesn't matter who they are. They're just like, this is just cool because I don't get to go to these things half the time. Right. And I just have fun doing it. Like, it's not work to me. It's completely play to me. And this was all because prior to the pandemic, a bunch of friends and I got together and we're like, shit, like, can we cuss on here? Like, there's no children on here, right? So we can, but what the big thing was, like, social life sucks post graduation from college, and instead of like just walking across the street to hang out with someone, we have to like travel across the city, drive 30 minutes, travel across the country, travel across the world to hang out with someone. And so how do we create a series of events where it's not just dinners and reunions and hangouts? Let's do something where we can actually get people closer together and get excited to like have fun with each other. And that started with like, we hosted a dinner at a restaurant where 2 Michelin starred chefs were like teaching us how to cook a meal and served us an 8-course meal. Then we went on to like an escape room in a mansion and all that kind of stuff. And we like 4-month-long cooking competition with professional judges. We just went quite crazy with that. And post pandemic, it was like, how do I just like do this for the world of investors? Because I love the investor world.
I don't know what world you came from, but you are talking Michelin star dimensions. Like, how much does those things cost? Like, I'm recently hosting an event, and then we finally got people sponsor as like cheese crackers and drinks, and at a VC office. Like, that's already like my max at like operational level of like, I don't know, as a founder. So I wonder, like, but you are at this time you're still like working at On Deck, and then you're like this like post pandemic, and you're doing all these things. Like, I wonder, how do you actually even make it possible from like an operational standpoint?
I'll put it this way. I'll say passion is contagious.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is, if you're doing something new and you're really excited about it, and people can see the world vision behind like where you're trying to go with this, and they get excited just by hearing you talk about it, they will go to great lengths to help.
Where are you going with escape room? I just want to know that. But like the escape room, okay,
So
keep going.
the
Sorry.
escape, like it varies, right? Like, for the example, the next escape room, it's going to be in an LP's office, right? Like, it's just that's easy,
Okay.
right?
Can you escape in an LP's office?
Well, so we're building up all the props. So we're like designing all the props, and we're going to put
Mhm.
that into the office and all that. So there are many clues in which we hide accordingly. Um, the So like, let's say for the Michelin starred folks, right?
Mhm.
I've always lived life trying to increase my surface area for serendipity to stick. And what I mean by that is, I love eating. I'm like a huge foodie, and Grace, you and I, we
Yeah,
vibe on a fundamental. We just love eating, right?
totally.
And if I like a dish at whatever restaurant I'm at, I will give
Mhm.
my compliments to the chef and I'll ask them for the recipe. Half the time they're like, hey,
Mhm.
I can't give you the recipe, but this means so much to us. Thank you for letting us know. Half the time they're like, dude, this is awesome. Thank you. Let me teach you how to make it, or let me show you how to make it. Here's a recipe and just go make it. Right. And then a couple times where I've asked that, chefs have just like, hey, you know what? Are you free 5 a.m. Saturday? Just come and by the kitchen and I will show you how to make it, and I'll teach you how to make it. And that was like great experience. And
You
all I did
gotta
was
be
ask, like,
kidding me.
I
That's
know.
free. That's free Michelin level class.
Exactly, and all I did was, like, I really enjoyed the meal, and, like, "Can I have the recipe?" Like, I enjoyed this one dish. I really like this part about the dish. I don't know how you did it, but
Yeah.
tell me how you did it.
By the way, I want to give the audience a little bit of context of David's like appetite or like taste palette. So basically, if you check out his Instagram, it's all like the world's most exquisite cuisines or whatever. And then when he ordered a salad, it has to be like $50 self-made, like literally the most random thing to put together into a salad. It's not even a salad, man. Like, okay, but keep going.
No, I got, like, really nerdy. So on my Instagram, to be fair, like, all the things I've taken pictures of were like, okay, we feast with our eyes, right? So I just, like, love plating, and I just plate my own food, and just makes it's simple things, but makes it look pretty, a little bit pretty. Um, But that's what let's say, like artistic, so to speak, portfolio on my Instagram, which I don't really publicize with, and this is probably the first time I'm actually talking about it publicly.
Okay,
But
don't follow him. Don't follow him until he follows me. But anyway, keep going.
I mean, I don't like a lot of my friends, a lot of my college friends don't even know I have an Instagram page, like an Instagram like
It
profile.
doesn't look like your Instagram page because it doesn't really have you in the
It's not,
page.
like, it's not, I'm not in it. Like my face is not on it except for maybe the profile pic. Anyway,
That gives it away. But keep
yes.
going.
But so like it just be really, really intentional, right? And then so over time you end up building these relationships with these amazing chefs, and that's why I can invite them out to like judge for a cooking competition. That's why I can ask them like, hey, you know what, you're opening a new restaurant, like can we just like be a part of this new experience before your restaurant opens, kind of thing. And so those allow you to do things, and eventually it becomes like, hey, you can ask these folks for catering for larger events as well, and they're like, you build that relationship, right?
Mhm.
And so that's what happens, and that's largely what I've just done, right? And let's say the mansion, we talked to the guy, and the guy's like, you know what, I love this idea so much, like we're just gonna give it to you like scot free. I just want to see it happen. Just tell me the stories after it happens, and like we'll do it. And that was it. And like that's how I host events. That's like over time that became one way to build relationships with folks. And for me, it was a very fundamental level, and it was really easy to get people excited. I wasn't going like, hey, you know what, Grace, come to my happy hour,
Oh,
kind
that's
of thing,
exactly
right?
what I said to you. But anyway, it's terrible. Anyway, you could have given me this advice like literally 6 days ago. So, but anyway, okay, let's
I'm
probably
sorry,
just
but you know
yeah.
now on.
I don't know. Okay, so there's like 6 level of connections with LP overview. So like basically, okay, let's give us an overview of like what kind of LPs are out there and then how do you find them? Is there any tools? Is there any kind of like Midas list equivalent of LPs? And because LPs are like not really shouting through the roof, right? Like, most VC firms are like, okay, here's our 65 blog. And you hear them on every podcast. But like for LPs, I feel like that trend just starting because of you and some other people. But anyway, so the LP just started recently sharing on podcasts and like before they were like kind of like behind the shadow, right? So like I wonder how do you find you just explain how you find them, but just give us an overview of like what kind of LPs are out there.
So I'll give some like archetypes of LPs out there, and I
Mhm.
may miss some. So as I recall them, like will eventually be all encompassing. So obviously I started off at On Deck Angels, and that's where I got to know LPs. Right,
Mhm.
the easiest and most available kind of LPs are individual LPs. Um, Once again, not investment advice, not kind of like legal advice or anything, but
Mhm.
literally anyone who owns a home in the Bay Area or particularly in SF is probably an LP or like a likely LP because they're an accredited investor. Because like
Mhm.
keep in mind, like houses are like what $1 million plus in like freaking the Bay Area.
Mhm.
Um, and so everyone could be an LP, right? Your
Mhm.
dentist could be an LP. Your lawyer could be an LP. Like, like dentists make like millions of dollars a year if they do decently well in their individual practice kind of thing, right? And so
Mhm.
there's a lot of these individual LPs. And their motivation usually isn't financial. If it is financial, then you probably need to tailor their concerns of like, hey, if you want, if it's like, if the main goal is financial return, you're probably just better betting off like a liquid asset class or stock market or like bonds or whatever it is, right? Um, their motivation is usually one, deal flow,
Mhm.
two, learning, and in that world, deal flow is like, how you know what, I'm not getting enough exposure when it comes to enterprise deals, deep tech deals, climate tech deals. I just want to learn how you discover and how to evaluate great climate tech deals because I've never done climate tech in my life before. I'm speaking from personal experience. I've never done climate tech before, which is why like I'm
Mhm.
interested in investing in climate tech kind of funds. The flip side of it is you have folks who are looking for like I guess that's in line with learning in general, but it's like the education. One individual who I ended up like including in my blog post back in 2022 on like it's called the non-obvious emerging LP playbook. Was this guy Gautam and I used to work together on deck, and he described being an individual LP in the best way possible. And I've used it every single time I had the opportunity to share this, which is being an LP is like investing into a fund is like signing up for your most expensive newsletter subscription. Um,
Oh my god.
it
That's
is
probably like a barrier thing, but keep going. Sorry.
like it probably is a Bay Area thing. Like when we sign for I signed up for way too many Substacks and Mediums and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
At some point I just start like if I don't read something for 6 months, I'm like I'm no longer interested in that, and I just kind of move on, right?
Mhm.
Um, but it is true. Like you are
It
signing
is
up for
accurate.
monthly, quarterly, depending on the kind of fund you invest in, annual reports that are by far the most detailed and include like insider knowledge like no one else. And you're just learning, you're like seeping these in. And in many ways, it ends up becoming the most tailored MBA class because you chose your professor and you chose how long you can like work with this professor. And it's more than just a 2-year program. And I like it. I like it, right? That's an individual. I'm an individual LP, right? Then there's like family offices. Family offices range. There's like smaller family offices who write like 250K to like maybe $1 million in terms of check size. And there are larger family offices. They're like, hey, you know what? Our minimum check size is like 5, 10 million, maybe even $20 million. The larger family offices are more like institutions, and they think more about like capital allocation, but also like how do you appreciate the family's net worth over the next 20, 30 years. And they usually count it in generations. So like, are you investing for like, I know like Jamie, who I think publicly recently announced that she's no longer going to be at Virtus, like for the past few years, she's been investing like generation 7, 8, and 9, right? And I can say that because she said it publicly, at least on my podcast. And I think she probably said it on other podcasts as well. And so that's like, how do you appreciate that generation's worth? So like generation 10, 11, 12 can do better or something like that, right? So there's that. And then the smaller family offices, they're getting their feet wet for the first time. Likely, an individual has accumulated enough wealth that they can now transfer it to an estate or like a larger family. And they're probably also in the like they see it more. Venture is not an asset class to them. Venture is an access class to them, because they love co-investing, or like on average, not always, but they do love co-investing. So what they're looking for is like, hey, you know what? I'm investing in a $10 million fund, $20 million fund, whatever it is. And when that seed fund's portfolio gets to Series A or Series B, I would love to co-invest. I would love to like go directly into those, and that kind of de-risks it. And I also have an information advantage when it comes to investing in those institutions. I'll fast forward a little bit. There's also endowments, there's foundations, there's sovereign wealth funds, there's pension funds. A lot of these larger players traditionally have very little access to venture as an asset class, unless you're like Yale, Princeton, Stanford kind of thing in terms of the university endowment side of things. That's a large part of that is because, one, they don't understand venture, and then two, a lot of their minimum check sizes for these really like pension funds are like $50 to $100 million. And it's so hard to invest in an emerging manager, or even like less than a fund 3, when you have your minimum check size at like a 50 mil or 100 mil, because as an LP, most of the time, a lot of folks don't want to be over like 10% of the overall fund's commitments, right? So if you take a 50 mil check, then you effectively have to raise a 500 mil fund. And that's not most emerging managers out there. And if they want to get an established managers, they already have a wait list of folks who want to invest in their fund. So it's hard to get in that as well.
I love that. Like, I think that's a really, really strong overview. And I wonder, like, before we jump into, the word intro, like cold outreach, blah, blah, blah. So I wonder, I really like the analogy of like, this is a really expensive newsletter. And basically you're picking, like, I mean, I'm still like trying to wrap my head around like what you just said. I feel like there's a lot to process there. I wonder, like, you asked this to like other, Courtney from Recast, I believe. Like, so basically you ask them like, okay, here's 3 kind of situation of like GPs, and some maybe like coming out of a big fund, or some maybe like a newbie from like a great undergrad, like, hustler. So I wonder, when you read over 50 GPs deck before, and I wonder, how do you categorize the current emerging emerging manager landscape? And since you chat with so many LPs, like, what is like how would you run this if you're starting a fund today? If you're starting an emerging GP fund, what are like 3 things that you should think about doing? Or like, if you're starting the fund a year from now, what would you do to kind of prepare yourself and build these relationships? And who should you even build relationships to? And then how do you kind of like have your own list? Because you always hear about people pitching like 2,000 people and then getting like 200 investors, and you have to have like 2,000 people to pitch to, right? So I wonder, how do you kind of like have that?
So I'll answer the second one, and if I forget the first one, let me know. Or hopefully, maybe the second answer answers the first one. If you're gonna like, there's a Chinese proverb that like I think that if the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, the second best time is today, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And in that world, if you're raising a fund today, hopefully you planted the tree 20 years ago or maybe like a couple years back.
Let's use the term of like, someone like, let's say person A, let's say call him Alex or whatever, or her Alex. So like, how would this Alex person raise? Because I don't want to get into any trouble. So anyway, just say.
Yeah. So I can't call out anyone in particular, but let's say Alex per se, right? Let's say Alex is raising a fund a year from now, give or take. They should be talking to LPs today. And also hopefully they have already built up some kind of angel track record. Usually it takes about 30 or so angel investments before you finally start realizing like, hey, this is what great founders look like. And hopefully within a portfolio of 30, 40, then you start having some clear breakout winners and you build a thesis around that where you have a unique structural advantage against that. The episode I put out earlier this week, which was with Martin Tobias and Jeff Renvelt. Martin Tobias is really candid and honest. And at some point you probably should have him on this LinkedIn Live or on your podcast.
Would love to.
He's great. He's great. And one thing he says, like, you have to be really brutally honest with yourself of where you've got really lucky and where you actually had an unfair advantage that's repeatable, right? There are some times when, my first angel investments that did reasonably well, I was very lucky. I didn't have a thesis when I invested. I was like, these are smart people that just taught me something new every single time I chatted with them. And I feel like I want to learn alongside them. I didn't really know if I was going to make a lot of money or something like that, but they were just really, really smart people. And there's a lot of that, right? So one, if you already have an angel track record, if you're like co-investing with folks, you should be talking to your co-investors a lot. There are a lot of multi-stage crossover fund GPs who have become either individual LPs or raise their own fund of funds, right? And a fund of funds is like, a fund to invest in other VC funds. And so you should probably talk to those. Get them to really like you. Get them like, hey, you know what? I love co-investing with Alex, right? And Alex is like, if I raise a fund, I can probably get $100K, $250K check from them, kind of thing, because they know me well. And when you're raising a fund one, realistically, about 60%, maybe even 70%, maybe even 100% to be fair, right? But 60% is usually like the bare minimum. Is they're all gonna be family and friends. They're gonna be people who they've seen you in action. They believe in you. They're your dentist that you chat with deals all the time for some random reason. They're your lawyer who you've been chatting with a million years, and they're like, hey, we've seen so many deals, and we just think like you're probably structuring your venture fund in the most exciting way that we've seen in a long time. It could be literally your family. It could be literally your friends, right? Your colleagues, your former coworkers, because they all know you well. They know how you work and they know how you act. And largely like you raise a bulk of that initial fund off of that. And then co-investors and all that, right? And then at the same time, you should probably be talking to like one or two institutional LPs every single week as you're setting yourself up to do so. And the best way to discover that, luckily, there's a lot of like media these days, at least in 2024 and maybe like late 2023 on the LP world. Most of the folks we're interviewing are institutional by design, right? You have folks like, I think Jason Calacanis has recently decided like, I'm going to do LP stuff, right? So you can listen to This Week in Startups, or I forget what the new thing he's calling it. You can do that. There's Samir Kaji's Venture Unlocked. And I think the new LP version is going to be called LP Unlocked or something like that. There's that. There's Origins by Notation Capital and Chris. There is Capital Allocators by Ted Seides. There's a bunch of these. Obviously I can plug in my own because I tend to interview a lot of, like, institutional ones, but like Superclusters as well, right? And so you can find all these institutional that way. If you're willing to pay tens of thousands of dollars, there are platforms out there where you can use it to discover LPs. For example, PitchBook. You can find LPs on PitchBook. You can find LPs on this relatively new emerging platform, but for family offices, called Fintrix. That's FINTRX, all in caps, I think. At some point, if you do an LP version of this, you probably get Fintrix to sponsor something.
Fintrix, please sponsor us, please. Sponsor David's escape room, and that I will participate. But anyway, keep going.
That'll be perfect. But yeah, so like you have all these platforms that are amalgamating things, right? Then you have like Allocate. Samir Kaji is running that, like Allocate, right? And that's a great way to discover other LPs that want to get access into like the best performing funds. You also have Revere. Revere is doing like, a lot of like happy hours and events and things like that, where they help GPs meet LPs, but also their platform by design helps LPs with portfolio management. So then there's a great way to discover that as well. I will say, if you're starting from scratch, it's really hard to find them from the beginning. But once you find one, I think Eric Bond once told me this, which I kind of like it. And I think I wrote it in a blog post called like how to think about LP construction, or I forget the exact nomenclature, but you can type in my name and type in LP construction, and that blog post will pop up. And Eric Bond contributed to that, where he said like, when you first start off, like I think it's like LPs are like family offices are like cockroaches. It's really hard. I don't know about the analogy, but like, it's really hard to find one. But once you find one, you find all of them, kind of thing, right? And I think it's kind of like that. Once you find one, you slowly, they introduce you to other folks. You start talking to other people. You start going to events. They start inviting their friends to like double dates or whatever it is, and you just start meeting everyone else. So once you get to like, I would say like 10 LPs, the rest kind of snowballs upon itself.
Wow. I'm just literally taking notes. I learned so much. You should have your own, like you should have you on your show. I know it sounds like
I'm not smart enough to do that. I am lucky to learn from very, very smart people who have more miles on their odometer compared to me. And they've been very willing to share and mentor and kind of help me grow as well. So I will give all the credit to them. And I'm just lucky to be along for the ride and learn along that journey as well.
You grow really fast, by the way. I feel like because I feel like you actually created a program for yourself that's just accelerate your growth. So you kind of launch yourself like into your own launch.
The thing that one of my biggest regrets. So I went to Berkeley for undergrad. And Berkeley is a great institution, but one of my biggest regrets, well, actually two big regrets. One, I didn't go to any foreign exchange programs, so I never got to visit any other place while I was in Berkeley. But the second part was Berkeley had this create your own major thing. And one of my biggest regrets is like, I didn't spend time creating my own major because I think I'd had so much fun creating my own major, but I didn't do that. So when I graduated, and this took many years to figure this out, I was like, you know what? Let me just create my own degree. Like, and how would I do so? What is the best way to do so? How do I pick my professors? And, how do I find ways to see them on a regular basis? So that
You're such a nerd, but keep going. I love that.
I'm a nerd. I'm a huge nerd. I'm also, when I preface at the very beginning, I was weird. I'm weird in a lot of ways. If folks are curious on ways in which I am weird, there is a blog post I believe I put out December 2022, which is literally titled Quirks That Make Sense, that just make sense. Quirks that just make sense. And it's all the quirks my friend and I have that I don't think anyone else in the world has. But those are things that we do, right? And so I created my own MBA effectively by learning from people I deeply respected and why they were willing to do. Like, I think the biggest thing with like building relationships, if you're looking for a mentor-mentee relationship, I don't like walk in and go like, "Can you be my mentor?" Never ask someone to be your mentor.
Oh, I do that all the time. Oh my god, I should not already asked you, but anyway, keep going.
You should not do that, because as soon as you say, "Can you be my mentor?" there is social intellectual baggage that comes with that, because they think in their mind, and this is not explicit, right? They think in their mind, "Oh, mentor, that sounds like an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours of commitment per week, 52 weeks a year. And over time, I'm a busy individual. Can I allocate all that time to you who I don't even know?" kind of thing. That becomes really, really so you never ask for mentorship. In fact, all my like over time, a lot of my like people I like learned from ended up becoming officially like, "Hey, David, I'm willing to mentor you," kind of thing, right? But you should never ask for mentorship. What you should do instead is you should get in a coffee chat, have it very specific, 1 or 2 questions. Don't go like, "Can I pick your brain for 30 minutes or whatnot?" That's a waste of time for most people, right? But you're like, here are 1 or 2 questions that only you can answer and no one else can answer. And then they'll give you advice on those, whatever 1 or 2 questions, right? And then after they do that, then you're like, okay, well, 2 months, it'll probably take me 2 months to actually implement your advice or think about like, implementing your advice. Let me come back to you in 2 months, and I'd love to show you the results of your advice. And that is something that sets 90% of mentees apart. Or like, the top 1% of mentees apart, which is like the follow-up. most people, when they get advice, when they get like a book recommendation, they don't actually read it. Like if I go like, Grace, give me a book recommendation, and then you give me whatever book you give, and like most people don't read it. They don't listen to the audiobook of it. They don't do anything of it, right? And for mentors out there, that advice just goes into the cosmos, into the nebula. But if you respond back and they know it's been put to good use and they actually feel that they've paid it forward, and not only that, maybe you've shared their advice and their book recommendation with someone else, they like that because they're like, my just interacting with Grace or just interacting with David has expanded my impact and advice to so many other folks. And that's what they like. And so part of the reason was like, let's do a blog, let's do a podcast, and all these kind of things. So where people share advice with me, and I'm like, I would love to share this with the world because it's so helpful. And this is what you're doing with, your podcast as well, Grace, right? Like this LinkedIn Live as well, where people are giving you advice and you're like, I'm gonna share with the world. So then the impact is not a one-to-one, it's a one-to-many. A lot more. And then over time, if you follow up with that, it's like, hey, I actually implemented that advice, or someone I gave your advice to also implemented your advice. Here are the results from that. They're like, tell me more. Like, and they start getting like, it's a feedback loop, right? They start giving you more advice, and all of a sudden you just accumulate a bunch of advice and you build your own like curriculum around it.
I wonder, okay, so we have 2 minutes. So, okay, I'm going to have this short. How do you build a long-term, like you kind of explain this by like, if they recommend you a book and then you read it and then you share the feedback of like, this is a great book and stuff. So I wonder, how do you translate that into a business partnership or business relationship? Because a lot of the LPs, or not LPs, but like a lot of more senior people in any industry, they would give a newbie some like really pro bono advice, and that's great, but like they wouldn't treat you seriously to, let's invest together. Let's like, you come work at my firm or whatever. So how do you translate that into a successful business relationship?
I will say that if I walk into a relationship thinking I want to turn this into a business relationship, I'm probably approaching it from the wrong perspective. Like the business relationship is the cherry on top kind of thing. I shouldn't walk into a relationship thinking that I want to build some kind of transaction between you and me kind of thing. I don't do that. And that might be shooting myself in the foot. I probably dropped a lot of could be business partnerships that I could have otherwise had. But I think at the end of the day, like things will naturally come. There's this great presentation that Siki Chen at Runway has. You just search up Siki Chen, Siqi. I guess in Chinese it's not Siki, but like, in Americanese, like we say Siki Chen, right? Siqi Chen. He has this presentation. It's called On Presentations. So you just like search up Siki Chen Twitter On Presentations or whatever it is, you'll find it, and it's like 60 slide deck or something. And one of the 2 slides I love most in that 60 slide deck is most people think that, like they think they have an idea of how other people think, right? Which is like you observe reality, then you collect facts based on that reality, and then you form opinions based on the facts in which you collect, and then you make decisions based on those opinions, which were based on those facts, and which are based on the reality in which you observed. The truth is, most people don't think like that, right? They have opinions first, and then they collect facts that fit in those opinions. In the world of venture, we call those opinions investment theses. They collect facts that fit in those opinions, and then they finally make a decision that makes them feel good. And a lot of people will rationalize, oh, we were completely strategic with this, and we like did all the homework, we did all the numbers. At the end of the day, like, numbers can only get you so far, right? You have to have a certain amount of conviction in a person, in a relationship. And I will say a lot of you could say business relationships that blossom from friendship, mentorship, and all that kind of stuff happened because we just really liked each other and the way we thought, and we shared frameworks with each other all the time. It's like, hey, here's this thing I'm thinking about right now. And I give something to someone in the raw, and they're like, oh, actually you would change it this way. You change it this way. Here's some advice. And you act on that. And over time you have this like back and forth thing already. And so when you were like, hey, let's just do a blog post together, let's do an LP investment together, let's do a deal together kind of thing, right? It becomes very easy because they know exactly how you think, and they know how you act, how you react to advice and feedback and criticism as well, which is a huge part in any kind of relationship. So I'd say, I don't know. I don't know if that was the best answer, but don't approach relationships as if you want to start a business relationship.
I love that. On that note, I know we're at the time that you mentioned, and where can we find you? I should have asked you to end with a quote, because I feel like your ending was so powerful and so good, and then there was like music playing in the background. But right now, like I know you're in a rush, so can you just let us know where can we find you to learn more?
Yeah. I'm everywhere. I
What's your
spend a lot of
Twitter?
time
I
as a
couldn't find you
consumer
on
angel
Twitter.
investor. I'm on Twitter, LinkedIn, email.
What's your Twitter? I
Twitter
don't know your
is
Twitter.
Cup of Zhou, so it's like CUPAZHOU. That's my Twitter. I guess like as Grace mentioned, I have an Instagram as well. You can probably like it becomes pretty obvious what my thing is. I'm not gonna try to promote my Instagram. There's nothing I regularly post on Instagram anyways, but I'm everywhere. I check all my messages. And my goal is to like respond to everyone unless it's
This is not
clearly
you, right? Is this you?
no.
Don't think.
Mine's not private. But like I try to respond to every message that seems genuine. There are a lot of like salesy, spammy ones that are like clearly spammy that I'm like, I don't respond to those. But if there's a genuine like relationship reaching out, like, hey, I heard you on Venture with Grace kind of thing, right? And I'm like, and this is what I thought about it. And I'm like, okay, I'll respond to that. I'll respond to every single one. Sometimes it takes me a bit longer, but I try to respond to things within 48 hours. But anyways, that's where to find me. I do have to run, but
Okay.
Grace, this has been so fun.
Thank you so much. Please come to my event in February 15, giving my event a shout out. It's not an escape room, but one day it will be. Okay. Have
I
a
will try
great,
to be there. I know you gave me the invite already, and I was like, I need to balance my schedule out a little
yeah.
bit. But as of now, I'm like 90% in. So if for those
Okay.
based in the
We'll,
Bay
we'll make
Area,
it, we'll make it 100%. I will personally give you a ride to the BART. We'll ride the BART together.
I'll take
But,
it. I'll take it. All right,
okay.
everyone, take care. Stay awesome.
Okay.
Grace
Stay
Hat, thanks for
awesome.
having me.
Thank you so much. Bye, David.